Winter in the Middle Ages, cold, relentless, a season that could take lives. We often imagine peasants shivering in hopelessness, but the truth is different. They had knowledge, they had methods, they had genius hacks to survive the cold. No heaters, no electricity, no modern gear. And still, they warmed their floors with straw. They sealed their roofs with clay. They used animals for heat. They built stoves that kept warmth for days. This was not luck. This was wisdom. Practical, sustainable, centuries ahead of its time. In this video, you will discover 7 medieval winter hacks, simple, powerful, and still useful today. And in the end, we must ask, were they the primitive ones? Or are we the fragile ones now? The fire is dying. Only embers glow. Frost slips in through the cracks. One wrong move and the family won't wake up tomorrow. That was winter in medieval Europe. Brutal, relentless. A cold that didn't forgive mistakes. But here's the twist. Peasants weren't helpless. They had methods. They had wisdom. And those hacks. Some still surprise us today. Slow down now. Picture Hughes, a father sitting in his earthen hut, his children asleep under rough wool blankets, the wind rattling the thatched roof, every breath a cloud of white, no thermostat, no electric heater, no modern gear, and yet with straw on the floor, clay sealing the roof, and animals sharing their warmth, he could keep his family alive. This wasn't luck. It was survival science. Practical, sustainable, passed down for centuries. So let me ask you, if the power went out tonight, could you keep your family warm with nothing but earth straw and fire? The first trick may look simple, but for Hughes, it is the difference between a cold death and a night of rest. The ground inside his hut is frozen hard. Lie down on it, and the cold does not stay under your feet. It climbs into your body bone by bone. That is why he begins with straw. He spreads it thick across the floor, turning the dirt beneath him into a soft golden layer. Each stalk traps tiny pockets of air, and here is the science. Still air is one of the best insulators. It slows down heat loss by conduction, letting the body keep its warmth longer. Archaeologists have found evidence of rushes and straw scattered on the floors of medieval homes and even monasteries. In some churches, they were refreshed every season, an early version of changing the carpet. On top of the straw, Hughes lays down hides and wool blankets. Now the floor is no longer an enemy. It becomes a mattress, rough but warm, that keeps his children from shivering in their sleep. Today, we buy foam mats, thermal rugs, and floor insulation at the hardware store. Hughes used straw, renewable, compostable, and free. The only catch, it didn't exactly smell like lavender carpet freshener. Still, it worked, and that was all that mattered. So here's my question. If your heating failed tonight, would you trust a bed of straw, or would you just hit add to cart and wait for the delivery truck? The second trick feels almost modern, the tile stove, known in German as the Kachelofen. Imagine Hughes stepping into a wealthier farmhouse high in the Alps. Instead of choking smoke inside the room, the fire burns behind a wall, often in the kitchen. The heat alone travels through a massive block of ceramic tiles that glows with stored warmth. Archaeologists date these stoves as early as the 8th century, and by the 13th, they were common across Germany and Alpine villages. They were not luxury ornaments. They were survival machines. Here's why. Ceramic has high thermal mass. Once heated, it holds on to that energy, then releases it slowly, evenly. Not the quick flare of a campfire, but a steady, radiant warmth that lasts through the night. No smoke in your lungs, no midnight stumble to add more wood. In modern terms, it is exactly what we now call a masonry heater or thermal storage stove. The concept hasn't changed. Burn once, stay warm for hours. The only difference, Hughes' neighbors had already mastered it hundreds of years before central heating or even IKEA. And while our stoves today come with sleek glass doors, theirs were covered in great green tiles painted with medieval patterns. So yes, it heated the family, but it also impressed the neighbors. Tell me, would you rather sit by a glowing ceramic stove that stays warm till morning, or keep paying that ever-growing electric bill? Hack number 3 is one of those tricks that feels almost timeless. When the night grows colder and every breath turns into mist, Hughes doesn't just rely on blankets or straw. He turns to stone. By the fading glow of the hearth, he carefully chooses his rocks rounded, dense, and free of cracks. The wrong stone could shatter in the fire, but the right ones will hold heat like a hidden reservoir. He buries them deep in the embers and waits. Slowly, they drink in the fire's warmth, glowing faintly beneath the ash. Archaeologists in Ireland discovered something similar in ancient Fulacht Fiad cooking pits, where people heated stones before plunging them into water. The science behind it is simple, but powerful stone has a high specific heat capacity. That means it can store a surprising amount of energy, then release it back slowly, hour after hour, long after the flames have died. When the stones are hot enough, Hughes lifts them out with tongs, wraps them in coarse linen, and slides them under his bed of straw and hides. Through the night, they give off a steady warmth. Not the harsh burst of a campfire, but a gentle, radiant heat that keeps his children from waking with frost in their hair. Today, we use hot water bottles, heat packs, or insulated metal flasks filled with boiling water. Different materials, same principle. You might say Hugh had the medieval version of a rechargeable hand warmer. The only difference, his came with the occasional scorch mark on the blanket. So let me ask you, if the heater broke tonight, would you trust a stone from the fire to keep you warm, or do you prefer your modern comforts wrapped in plush fabric and sold with free 2-day shipping? Hack number 4 is less about what you put inside the house and more about the house itself. Hughes lives in a simple earthen hut, but across northern Europe, people built something called Grubenhäuser, or sunken floor houses. At first glance, they looked like ordinary cottages, but step inside and you would notice the floor was not level with the ground outside. It was dug down sometimes by half a meter or more. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of these Anglo-Saxon homes dating from the 5th to the 12th century. Beneath the raised wooden floor lay a pit filled with straw brush or even packed earth. The reason, insulation. The earth itself acted like a shield, holding back the worst of the wind and cold. The pit below created a pocket of still air, and still air is one of nature's best insulators. Think of it like this today. We design earth shelters or basement homes that use the ground's thermal mass to stay warmer in winter and cooler in summer. They needed no blueprints, no modern engineering degree, just a shovel, some patience, and the wisdom passed down from their ancestors. For Hughes, a half-buried floor meant the difference between sleeping in a freezer and sleeping in a cave, warmed by the earth. Not cozy by today's standards, perhaps, but a lot cheaper than your basement renovation. So let me ask, would you try living half underground to cut your heating bill? Or do you prefer to keep paying for central heating while Mother Nature laughs from the outside? Hack number 5 may not sound glamorous, but it was effective sharing your bed with animals. In Hughes' world, the line between barn and bedroom was thin, sometimes only a wooden plank. Across medieval Europe, peasants often kept their animals on the lower floor while the family slept above. Archaeological evidence from Anglo-Saxon houses, along with later written accounts, confirms that this was not just convenience, it was survival strategy. The science is straightforward. Every living creature gives off heat. A sheep at rest radiates about the same warmth as a small space heater. A cluster of chickens can raise the ambient temperature by several degrees. Add that to human body heat, and suddenly a freezing hut becomes a much more livable space. For Hugh, this meant that on the coldest nights, he might bring a few lambs or goats inside. Their steady warmth mixed with his family's creating what survivalists today call shared body heat. Not fancy, not high-tech, but it worked. Of course, there were trade-offs. The occasional bleating a restless hoof, or the smell that no amount of straw could hide. Let's just say it wasn't exactly a luxury hotel experience, but when it came down to frostbite versus a noisy roommate, the choice was simple. Now compare that to today. We buy heated blankets, double-pane windows, and HVAC systems. Hughes had a goat. Honestly, his method might still be cheaper. So tell me, if the winter storm cut your power tonight, would you rather have an electric blanket or a sheep curled up by your side? Hack number 6 takes us above the floor and up to the roof. For Hugh, the walls of earth were not the only defense. The real battle was overhead against the howling wind. His roof was thatched, built from bundles of straw, layered thick. Thatch is strong, flexible, and abundant, but on its own it is not airtight. In winter, the north wind can whistle straight through, turning the house into something like a giant flute. That's where clay came in. In late autumn, families smeared a mixture of clay and mud across the outer layer of thatch. As winter set in, it hardened into a crust, sealing the gaps. Archaeologists studying preserved longhouses in Scotland like Moir Lanish Longhouse and Sunnybray Cottage found evidence of this method. It was a weatherproof coating centuries before the word weatherproof existed. Scientifically, the trick makes sense. Clay reduces air infiltration. With fewer drafts, heat loss by convection is slowed, and the interior stays warmer. In other words, plug the holes, keep the warmth inside. Today, we buy synthetic sealants, silicone caulking, and high-tech membranes. Hughes had clay. And yes, it was messy heavy and not exactly home decor friendly. But you know what, it worked. So tell me, if a storm ripped across your roof tonight, would you trust modern plastic weatherproofing? Or would you be outside with Hughes smearing mud by hand, hoping the north wind doesn't turn your home into a whistle? Hack number 7 feels almost too advanced for the Middle Ages underfloor heating channels. Picture Hughes visiting a great monastery far wealthier than his small hut. Beneath the stone floors, hidden from sight, ran a network of flues channels that carried warm air from a central fire. Instead of smoke filling the hall, heat moved quietly beneath their feet. Archaeologists studying the monastery at Reichenau in Germany found evidence of such a system as early as the 9th or 10th century. It worked with surprising efficiency up to 90%. That is not primitive guesswork. That is engineering. The science makes sense. Hot air rises, but if you guide it first under the floor, the stone above absorbs the heat and radiates it back slowly. The result: a room that stayed warm long after the fire had faded. Monks could study, pray, and sleep without their ink freezing on the page. Today, we call this radiant floor heating. Luxury condos advertise it as modern comfort. But the monks at Reichenau were already enjoying warm toes 1,000 years ago. For Hughes, such a system was out of reach. His family relied on straw hides and hot stones. Still, knowing that somewhere stone floors glowed with warmth proves that the Middle Ages were not as backward as we often imagine. So tell me, if you had the choice tonight, would you prefer radiant floor heating or Hughes' medieval starter kit straw mud and a goat? Morning comes. The storm has passed, but the snow still buries half the doorway. Hughes steps outside, his breath white in the air, his cloak heavy with frost. He is tired, but his family has survived another night. And here's the truth: he didn't survive by luck. He survived with knowledge. Knowledge of straw floors, of clay-sealed roofs, of hot stones and shared body heat. These were not random tricks. They were a system built, slowly tested across generations, and grounded in simple science. We like to think we're more advanced with our thermostats, heated blankets, and smart homes. But tell me, if the power went out for a week, which would keep you alive, a box of gadgets or the wisdom of your ancestors? Maybe the real question is this: who is more fragile, the medieval peasant in a straw hut, or us in our modern houses of glass and wires? So now I want to hear from you. Out of these 7 hacks, which one surprised you the most? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more tested survival knowledge from history, make sure to subscribe, because the next storm, whether in the 14th century or today, may come sooner than you think.